you. She's walking up with a talk and a book. Be very afraid. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Today's topic is called Travels with a Glad Heart. And I've been telling people that really the better topic for today's talk is what to do when life stinks. Okay, that's not what I said, but you get the drift. On a personal level, I have had such a challenging week. And as I talk to people, more and more people are saying, my God, me too. I just feel that there are people out there, and you're nodding at me. I feel there are people out there who are just walking around with a dark cloud. And we are people of hope. We are people of joy, of optimism. But it doesn't mean that life doesn't happen to us. I mean, I was in such a tough place this week, and the details don't matter because we all have details. But I called my personal spiritual guru, who is Linda Wint. And I said, I'm not in a place. I just said, I'm not in a place to do this talk. Because it's just been so hard, I got nothing. And she said, oh no, that is when you need to do the talk. And she's right. It has been such a blessing for me. There's a Unity minister that I listen to a lot. Her name is Ellen Davenport, and she is attached to Unity of Wimberley, Texas. And she's a wonderful speaker. I invite you to go on iTunes, listen to her talk. She's just great. She's a former reporter. But she always says that when you pick a topic, you are invited to live it that week. You pick a topic, and life just shows up, and you are living your talk. You are learning your talk. And that's what happened this week. And so I'm announcing now that my topic for next week is how to deal with sudden great wealth. Are you listening? So I have had the chance this week to live my talk. And the gift has been that I have been aware enough of it to try to understand the gifts that it is giving me. So what I want to talk about today, and I just want to talk, is some of the insights I gained this week and what we all can do using the principles that we know and we practice to help us get through times that are really tough. Is anybody out here having a tough time except me? Can I see a show of hands? Is there anybody to whom this topic speaks? Yeah. I mean, what is it? I mean, we're just feeling like we have a dark little cloud. I don't know what it is because we just went through the burning bowl. We supposedly released all this stuff. Then we had the white stone. We stated our intentions for the new year. And this stuff is back. What's that about? Well, I think what it's about in part is that we are human beings. That's why we're here. That's why we're in this suit. That's why we're in this flesh, to keep getting these lessons, to keep learning them, to keep struggling through our own human experiences, to find the joy, to find the optimism, to find our way back to our essence, to the God within, to the Spirit within. And it's not easy. Maybe it should be easier, but sometimes it's just not. But that's the gift of the lessons we have. So in thinking about this, I decided to talk about some of the principles that we can use when times are hard. And it's not just lessons. It's not just events. It's not just bad things happening. I mean, we all have bad things happen. We lose jobs. We quit jobs. What's that about? We have folks become ill. We have folks die. Those are obviously challenges that we face that just kind of hit us. But we also just have life circumstances happen. I have some friends who are getting older. Now, I'm at a point in my life, I'm 59, and I'm at a point in my life when I'm thinking, this is it. I'm never going to be on the Supreme Court. Bummer! When I'm 25, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to, do this, I'm going to do that. I have friends who are coming up to me who are my age, and they're saying, this is not what I expected. I didn't think it was going to be like this. What do we do with that? I mean, we all have expectations. Some of us have different expectations that are where we ended up. So how do we take these experiences? How do we take where we are? How do we take the gifts that are around us every day and continue to move forward in hope and optimism and joy and service? That's what we need to think about today. The first principle, and I don't even know if this is a principle, but the first practice I found useful is going to surprise you. It's okay to wallow. We're going to have a wallow moment. When you have feelings, and when you are mad or fearful or distressed, it's not even okay to wallow, it's a requirement. You need to honor the feelings that are in you. They're there for a reason. Feelings are not like a virus. They're not something that just attack you. They're there to serve you. As we learned in Essential Spirituality this morning, pain is a wake-up call. It's a call for examination. It's a call for awareness. In our society, and sometimes especially in New Thought, we're also relentlessly optimistic. That when something bad happens, we're like, it's fine. It's all for the good. It's going to be fine. And meanwhile, your little self is, people laughing, your little self is in pain. Take it out. Hold it. Honor it. Tina Gilbertson has written a book called Constructive Wallowing. How to beat bad feelings by letting yourself have them. We all have them. We're human. We may have been essences of spirit before. We're going to be essences of spirit after. But right now, I'm in this 59-year-old suit that is in some pain. And so is everybody else at times in their lives. So have them. Look at them. Sit and feel them. This is where our spiritual practices come in. We sit and we breathe, and we don't hide from them. We accept that we are angry. We are fearful. We feel where in our bodies that hits us. Our emotions are not going to leave. Wouldn't it be grateful if emotions were like web pages? You could just feel them, but no, I don't like that web page. So X, there goes that one. X, there goes that one. Or better yet, clear all. I'd be ecstatic that way. But that's not how it works. You're not going to get through them. You're not going to honor them and embrace them and move past them until you face them and you hold them and you realize they're okay. That's the way we get through emotions. Think of biblical metaphors. The Israelites didn't go around the Red Sea. They had to go through it. We go through it. We go through it together. We go through it in love, and we go through it forgiving ourselves. So the first step to living life with a glad heart when life stinks is honoring your emotions. Don't beat yourself up for having them. There's a quote from Rumi that I found that I like, and I'm going to read it. Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls up the rotten roots so that new roots hidden beneath have room to grow. Whatever sorrow shakes from your heart, far better things will take their place. We know this to be true. The second principle I want to talk about that we all know is true. I'm not telling you anything you don't know because, as we've all known, the answers are in the room. The point of a talk is just to remind us so that we can walk out knowing what we know to be true. The second principle I think that we all need to focus on in tough times is gratitude. Even when things are hard, we are grateful because we have blessings and we know that good times are coming. Even this week, when things were tough, when I just felt like running and screaming, I could choose to be grateful for the things that are in my life, and there are so many that are blessings. Gratitude opens our hearts, and it just lifts us out of our crazy minds. You know how your minds just keep running and running and running and worrying and concerning? If we breathe and we take a moment to look around us and be grateful, it opens our hearts. fear and worry and concern, they shrink our hearts. They shrink us all. They make our world smaller. They make our views smaller. Gratitude opens us up. Don't we know that to be true? Taking a minute and breathing and just being in the present and expressing gratitude for all we have, for all we are going to have, makes such a huge difference. The other thing gratitude does is it opens us up to the gifts that we may not see otherwise. It opens us up to wonderful things happening in front of us, even in the middle of challenge. I'm going to tell another Nick story. You all know my son Nick, who comes to church here, a young man with Down syndrome. He is a true gift. A couple months ago, he and my wife, Deborah, were walking into Kroger, or as we say, the Kroger. And they were going to do some shopping, and behind them was a lady who was just defeated. It was 6 o'clock. She was coming in from work. She had had a bad day. We see them all the time. We are them all the time. We're just walking in, not talking to anybody, head down. And Nick, because he's a gentleman, held the door for her, and he looked at her, and he stopped and went, "Oh, you beautiful." And she said, "What?" He said, "You beautiful." Because to him, she was. It was transformational for that woman. She almost started crying. She was like, "Oh, thank you so much." That happens every day to all of us. He just noticed what was beautiful, and it touched her heart, and if she hadn't been listening, she wouldn't have noticed. But those gifts are there all the time. We have to be open to them. We have to expect them. Here in New Thought, we believe that as we think, so goes our reality. Now, we call it New Thought, but New Thought is just old wisdom. The Buddha, when he started his teaching, he began with these words: "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." The energy we put out, our focus, our intentions, manifest in our lives. While we often cannot control life circumstances, we get to decide our perception of them. We get to pick how we are going to think. We see this with members of our own community. We know people in this room, or people we know, who have incredibly tough lives, who have serious challenges, and yet they still focus on the blessings in their lives. They look at the positive. They thank God for all that is happening. And it doesn't mean that they're ignoring what else is happening. It means that they are picking to choose happiness, to choose optimism, to choose hope. Don't tell me that doesn't change their lives. Don't tell me that even sometimes doesn't change their outcomes, because we've all seen it happen. Those are choices that we have. One of my favorite authors and teachers is the Buddhist Pema Chodron, who actually did the writing for our reading this morning. In that same book, The Places That Scare You, she writes, "We can let the circumstances of our lives harden us so that we become increasingly resentful and afraid. Or we can let them soften us and make us kinder and more open. We always have this choice." So as we walk out today, which do we choose? Because we have a choice. Which do we pick? To get smaller, to get harder, or to open up, even if times are hard. The third principle is related to the first two. It's the gift of release. This was one of Charles Fillmore's 12 Powers of Man. He called it elimination, but it's really release. It's the gift of resting in the I don't know. This is a lesson I learned a couple of years ago from Reverend Annette, and it's been so useful. It's the gift of resting in the I don't know. How much of our stress, we are such efficient beings. Here's what we do. We take a situation, we make it mean something, we then catastrophize it to future events that are going to spin out. We just make stuff up. And then we sit here and it ruins our health today. What's wrong with this picture? We don't know often how things are going to turn out. We don't know what the results are going to be. We have to rest in the knowledge that sometimes we just don't know. There's another writer and author I like whose name is Mindy Audlin. And she has a great technique that I like. She calls it what's up. It's the what up process. Has anybody ever heard of this? Okay, the what up process is way cool. What we do is we take a circumstance, and instead of catastrophizing it, we just decide to think it's going to end well. I am not making this up. Take a circumstance, think of a good result, and that's what's going to happen. So instead of catastrophizing it, which is our default position, we just say, this is going to end well. I see this ending well. I see this individual healed. I see this individual in the light. I see this circumstance ending up this way. What up? I invite you to try it. I've tried it, and it does make a difference. Again, we get to pick. I selected today's reading just because we don't always know. How often have you read that situations which, when you're walking into them, are adverse turn into blessings? Who here remembers Charles Colson? Remember Nixon's special counsel? I know I'm dating myself. Okay, so this guy went to federal prison. He was Nixon's special counsel during Watergate. He was convicted in 1974 of obstruction of justice, and he went to federal prison for a number of months because he had, well, obstructed justice. Okay. He had an experience. He saw God. He had a conversion experience before he went to jail. When he got out, he turned his life around and he started prison fellowship, which served inmates and inmates' families, their kids, and he also did some other things which arose out of the adverse circumstances of his life. Now, I'm not commenting on his theology or his any of that. I'm commenting on when he was convicted and he was heading to prison, it was no doubt the worst day of his life. Things could not get better, but it was a beginning for him. And we don't know. What we see as an ending may be, as Pema Chodron says, the beginning of a great adventure. Give yourself the grace to not know and the hope that it will end well. Now, the same is true of good luck. I once knew a guy who won the lottery. Of course, that won't happen for me when I win the lottery. But he won, I don't know, a few $1 million. And his life went completely into chaos. It was like, oh, God help you if you get what you asked for. But I think he probably rued the day that wonderful good event happened to him, because everything bad spun out as a result of it. So again, we don't know. The third, maybe the fourth at this point, thing that I want to point out in terms of a practice is the need to maintain a daily spiritual practice. What is it we say? We need to practice when it's easy, so it's easy when it's hard. Another one from Reverend Annette. Yes. We need to do it every day, even when times are hard. If you're like me, when times are hard, it's the first thing that goes. I'm just too depressed to meditate. I don't want to pray. I'm just going to sit and wallow. Well, that's the other thing about wallowing. You can't do it too long. You have to have like a wallow stop point. Okay. But it's the first thing that goes. But I encourage you to keep it up because it's going to pull you through. In her book, author Anne Lamott wrote a great book. It's called Help, Thanks, Wow. And I encourage you to read it. She's wonderfully entertaining. But what her book does is those are the three prayers that she says we all need. Help, thanks, and wow. And in her book, she tells the story of a friend of hers who was dying of cancer. He was an atheist. He was bitter. He was depressed. He was hurtful. And she went to him and she said, why don't you try this? Why don't you just pretend for the next 6 weeks that you believe in God? Just pretend. And act as though you do. And he did. Every day he prayed, he would meditate, he would just tell himself that he believed in God. And 6 weeks later, his life was transformed. He was open, he was happy, he was hopeful. And he didn't even believe. He just acted like he did. He just did it. This is one thing we're learning in essential spirituality is the value of practices, the value of putting feet to our talk. Do it. Maintain your daily spiritual practice, even when times are hard. It will see you through. You will feel better doing it every day. The last one that I think is a useful one that I have found this week, as I have gone through this week, is the strength of community, is the strength of connection. I was interested to see an article in the New York Times yesterday. How many of you saw it? It was about addiction, and it was how the source of addiction or the cause of addiction, one thing they're finding is not necessarily wanting alcohol or wanting drugs. That's the manifestation of it, but it's the lack of connection. Because we are beings made to connect. We are not isolated. We are community people. And what they're finding is for folks who are suffering addiction, being connected helps. It helps them get through it. It helps them get over it. It helps them see something more positive than the next fix or the next drink. For us, community helps us through the tough times. Connection helps us through the tough times. Reverend Sydney talked about this last week when she talked about, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, when she talked about reaching out and asking one of us just to hold you in prayer, to keep the high watch while we are going through tough times. I did that. I called her up and I said, I'm having a tough time. You need to keep the high watch. It's on you. Thank you. There is nobody in this room who does not have a friend who will do that. Your friend is probably sitting here. Nobody in this room is so alone that there is nobody we can call to hold our hands, to hold us in the light when we need it. That is a principle that will always see us through. So, as I've gone through this week, these are the principles that have helped me. And I really wanted to just talk to you about them. And I'm so grateful that Linda made me stand up here and do that.
Me too.